You ready? You're the ideas, dude.
You
Yeah?
want to do them right now?
Yeah, hold on a second. Here we go. 1, 2, 3.
This is the INKPULP Podcast.
Look at this impromptu get together that this guy said, let's do it. You know what? You're a responsible podcaster. You're like, you saw an opportunity to bank a whole lot of them, and you said, let's do it. And I was on board. Ladies and
Yeah.
gentlemen, welcome to the 149th episode.
I'm going to try that one again.
What are we? We're on 172.
You were 10 off. This is 139.
Oh, man. All right. I swung for the fences, dude.
Hey,
All right. 139. We're doing this again. This time, one more time without Matteo Scalera. Without a critical component of the freaking Voltron 3-part lion.
And his bots. We don't have his bots.
So that's what I mean. Is like, you're probably the torso. You started the whole thing. I'm an arm. Mateo's an arm, and his bots are the 2 legs, you know?
Who's the head? We got no head.
No, you're the main. That's the main torso. You don't know Voltron? The Voltron is the head.
Voltron, but I remember the last piece to form was the ship that went into the head.
No, you're thinking about something else that's already embedded. You know what? I quit.
Yeah,
it's embedded. That's embedded into Black Lion, dude.
Right.
Crying out loud.
You're right.
John Moore's gonna come in here and just.
Oh, I'm thinking of Mazinger Z.
You're showing your age. How are you doing, pal?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I just got back from a work trip into LA. Landed, came right down here. We were chit-chatting on the phone for a little bit, texting back and forth. Hey, let's bank one while we still have the time.
Yeah, we need a bank.
And the energy. You finally got your computer in order. It was crashing on you left and right.
Right. It's functional. I still need a new machine, but I've got a little bit of time now.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. It kind of prolongs life. I mean, I don't know, man. It's I am always about, and I think we were talking about this offline. I am no longer invested in getting a 100% brand new machine, especially knowing full well that some of these machines are even Macs, even like, you know, like back in the day, you could rely on these things to last a little while, right? But depending on how much mileage a person puts on the machine at the front end, right, you could really get away with a good amount of savings. But you're like, hey, let me play it safe. Let me get a brand new machine and make sure that I have something that's going to last me a little while.
This is a good conversation to have. So my experience with Macs has been when you get a secondhand machine, and I've never purchased a refurb, so that might be a whole different story.
Right.
When I've been given, like you sent me the current Mac I have, or when I've wiped a Mac previously to give it to like my mom or something, it's like it's handicapped at that point.
Sure.
Mac's handicapped. So
wait, handicapping. It's underperforming. Is that what you're?
Yeah, it's slow. It lags. Like they just lag and they're slow.
But it's like years. Like, you know, for instance, the one that you have now. How old is it? It goes back
2017.
2017. So easily about what, 6 years? A little bit 6 years old. It should still be okay, but obviously it's showing it's starting to chug now, right?
And
but have you had that similar experience? 5, 7 years older than current year? Is that what you've been getting?
Yeah. So buying a refurb is a newer machine.
Yeah.
So my one thing I've learned, Eric.
Yeah, tell me.
My method of thinking is it's not reliable 100%.
What's the thinking?
Well, it's just like I said, like I had wiped machines and given them away or received them, and they always lagged after that. So my thinking was, when you wipe a machine, it creates that. But now talking to you, you're like, well, there's an age component to that wiping, and that's true. I didn't think about that part.
Yeah. I mean, who knows with machines, right? Like I've wiped my machines almost like completely by accident, because I kind of like, oh man, this is too much to try to delete stuff off of here that I didn't care for. So rather than having to go through the process of like, what do I want to keep? What do I want to hold on to? I just start from the beginning and install the critical stuff, which has been my sort of true north. That's been sort of like my modus operandi, is like just install the stuff that I use and not the junk.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
keep my computer very, very empty.
yeah, as lean as possible. Now,
That's what I do.
my phone is a completely different manner. There's
Me
all sorts
too.
of stuff on my phone. I'm like, what is this, dude?
Yeah,
Well,
me
why
too.
was this so fascinating to me? Anyway, it is to say that I try to keep it lean because I don't want anything on there that I don't absolutely positively need. But also when I wipe it, it's relatively, like maybe a year, 2 years in, I go like, hey, let me just start over real quick. And I wonder if that does, sort of inform on why it starts to lag on you, but I don't know. Right. It's never done it to me. It could just be everything that you were talking about. Plus, you're just, you just have a string of bad luck, pal.
Maybe
Might
that's the case. I'm Charlie Brown. I'm Charlie Brown of computer ownership. So the new machine you got, is that a refurb?
No.
So you got a new one.
I did, because there was no refurb when it came out.
Right. That's right. It was brand new.
Yeah.
I mean,
but if you were to ask me now, hey, Eric, you need a brand new machine. The M2s just came out, and after all the stuff that I've been reading, listening to, I'm like, there isn't such a massive performance boost, at least for the kind of stuff that I need it for.
Right. That's the next thing we talk about is what.
Yeah, that makes me go like, oh, I've got to go get the most recent version of that machine instead of getting one that's certified by Apple and protected under their warranties or whatever it is. And even if I wanted to take a chance on it, I'll just go out. Sometimes when I'm reading through these different types of marketplaces that make them available, they're either protected by, like if you go online somewhere, like I know a place that's like, what is it? Adorama is a good one, right? That's certified by their company if anything ever goes wrong with it. Or if I were to buy it from a private individual, obviously it'd be better if you knew the person that you're getting it from, because there's a personal responsibility there. But I always ask, like, what were you using the machine for? Is it like super heavy duty, like were you freaking data farming with it, whatever, crypto farming with that shit,
mining,
or like if they're yeah, exactly, which you don't do with Mac, so that's moot. But I mean, like, if they're just doing photo editing or video editing, I'm like, well, that's what I'm going to end up doing with it anyway. So
yeah,
why the heck not?
I just need to be able to handle large Photoshop files and streaming like we're doing now.
Yeah. All right. Well, there goes that chapter. Now, again, we are doing this kind of, we don't necessarily have topics and agendas in mind. We just end up talking. It's so much better, I think, when we just talk, because number one, we are native English speakers. And it's hard to just talk when Matteo is involved, because we have to slow it down.
You got to dumb it down for the dummy.
Yeah. I know you said it, and I think it's because you're allowed to talk to your brother about like that, like, but if a guy does it, you're like, hey, don't talk about my brother like that,
Right.
So I'm like, you can call him an idiot and I'll nod my head like this. I'll never say it. I say I have to, we just can't talk as liberally as we do now. You called him stupid. I appreciate it.
You can call him stupid. It's okay.
Now, he did zing me one while we were in Italy. He's like, all of these jokes that don't work, why don't you try telling a joke in Italian, right? And I thought about that. I was like, whoa, that's really profound. He's like, hey, he's doing pretty well.
Yeah.
The fact that he can speak English so well, and he's lobbing as many, like his hit to miss ratio is pretty good now.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
And then when I criticized him, he's like, Eric, why don't you try telling something in Italian? And everybody's like, oh, right. And I thought to myself, motherfucker, you've been going to the United States for going on 20 years now.
That's true.
And you're still shit at telling United States jokes. You want me to tell you a joke in Italian and I don't freaking live here, Anyway.
What you should have done was just told a joke with like a New York Italian accent.
That'd have been more insulting. But that would have been a good one.
That's the point.
All right, we did all the catching up in as far as like Italy is concerned, right? We even brought Jim Ma food on.
Yeah. Did we run the intro? Did we already do that?
Yeah, we did, right?
Okay. I thought we did, but
we're a couple of old dudes just trying to press buttons so everything works. Yeah,
Have you been the same since you got home?
What do you mean?
I feel like I'm still like getting back to normalcy.
Oh, are you dumb? I was about to say, like, are you dumber now since you got back? Listen, I think, and I'll say this without any sort of like jokes behind it. Italy is the place that I would love to move to in another life, like in a previous version of my life, without the responsibilities and sort of the choices that I made now. But which, by the way, I'm not, I'm not bemoaning the choices I made now.
Sure.
I love my life here, right?
Right.
But in the parallel universe, right, Italy is the place that I would have moved to. So whenever we visit, and it took me forever to get over the last time that we were there when we were in Venice together, when we were in Bologna together, and driving up and down the countryside. And that took me forever to get to, and now to get over. And then finally, when we got back, I was compelled to sort of like be present, but there's still a piece of me that's yet to come back, if it ever comes back from that place, because I love it so much.
It's gone.
Yeah.
I will say this. For me, I agree, but not in another lifetime. It is in discussion at the house that maybe
That what, you're going to leave and go to Italy?
We would go to Italy.
Yeah. Like to stay, not just to.
No, to move there.
To move there. Holy crap, Shawn. That's pretty big.
Yeah, but I've always had this adventure in me. I always liked moving to new places. Or like Steph was such a like stay close to home person that getting her away from home was hard for her. But now she's pretty adapted to new stuff. So yeah, we look, we got this one life. Where would we love to live? Where you can just wake up every morning and just like, I really enjoy Atlanta. I do like where I live, and where I live is a great place to raise kids. It's very affordable, and I really enjoy the city here, and the airport here is spoiled me quite dramatically.
Sure, yeah.
But we're like, what would it be like to live in the Caribbean, or what would it be like to live in Italy? And so it's in discussion because one day we would like to, but we also talked about like, it would be great if we could find a place where like you and I talk about, you, me, Matteo, and Tommy and Jim, we always have these conversations of maybe we could start like a community somewhere.
Sure.
And move there. So that's another option. And
and raise like the old school American flag of like, don't tread on me, and everybody gets muskets.
We'll behead hogs and put it at the head of the driveway on poles.
For sure. No, I mean,
barbarian.
I think it's a good idea. I think, for me, similar kind of conversations with my wife, where not necessarily moving there full time. Your familiar situation is different than mine. Your kid's a little bit more grown, and mine are still in sort of like in the toddler stages. So it's not ideal to move, but certainly having a place to go to as a family there would be nice.
And maybe that's a better way to look at it.
That might be not for you, but for us, I know like it might be the more ideal steps, so that you kind of get used to being there and so on and so forth. But
for me, maybe that's a more realistic way. Is what I'm saying, because if the kids don't go, like I think, they're all about it. But if they start getting their careers going and they're living their dreams, then they're not going to want to up and.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, everything is sort of like, hey, this is the plan for now, and something will come along and say we're going to change those plans really quick.
Right.
We're gonna move the goalposts. Let's do it this way.
When we talked about it, it was always like not while Steph's mom was still here. And then last week, now she's not here. So now I'm wondering if it's going to. Thank you. It's Alzheimer's is fucking no joke, man.
Yeah,
but it's weird.
Steph is doing okay. As okay as you can be.
She's doing a lot better than you think. The thing is, when someone has Alzheimer's, you mourn them every day for years.
Oh, for sure.
You worry about, like, you're watching them slip away. They stop recognizing you. Your own mother doesn't even recognize you. They stop talking, and it's just this brutal, long, drawn out mourning period. So then you also, you're watching them suffer every day.
Oh yeah.
So for that,
not just because of the age, but obviously because of the condition, right? Like that combination.
She was young for this one.
Yeah.
So for it to end, it's almost like everyone. I had to tell my kids, because my daughter was like, I feel like a little relieved. I was like, that's normal. Everyone's feeling that, and it's sad, but at the same time, it's like we've been, dealing with this for so long and watching it just destroy her for so long that to know she's okay now is relieving. a bit.
Oh, for sure. Some people might feel a bit of guilt because of that relief. But
Right,
I
and
think
that's what I was telling my daughter. Like, it's okay. Like, you can feel that. That's legit.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but
well,
now
on that happy note, that's let's
just
move
go
to
to black
Italy.
and white again.
Fucking
My
hey,
point
Shawn.
was, now Steph doesn't have any ties here, so it's something we could think about.
Yeah, yeah. Well, to your question earlier, you know, do I feel like I've come back? I think I've been compelled to come back. I think I have 99, 95, 98% back.
Yeah, me too.
But there's still a part of me that thinks about like, man, what a great time. I was talking to you about this offline. You know, the first thing that my wife did after we got back into town was buy herself one of these cappuccino machines.
Yeah, baby.
And had been making like really, really great cappuccinos in the house. She learned how to do it exactly the way we had it when we were, you know, trotting around Italy.
I might have to
for a little bit. No, it's really good.
I mean,
It's really good. These are the kinds of conversations, and I want to circle back to this. I want to circle back to a conversation that we had when we were at Matteo's place doing the podcast up there. By the way, have you uploaded that yet?
No, I have one person that says they were going to try to get edited together.
Yeah.
There's no guarantees. I'm waiting for Jim is getting me in touch with his editor.
Oh, good. Good.
So I'm just trying to find an editor. I haven't had a ton of luck there, but I'm hoping Jim's guy comes through. Well,
here, let's what do you call it? Let's rally your listeners. If you guys know of either a podcaster, the similar to this kind of stuff that we do, right? If you guys know any of these people who do a really good, professional, clean job of editing videos, leave it in the comments below. We'd appreciate your help.
And I put it out on social media. You know, about a year ago, before you and I were even recording together, I got a DM from someone on Twitter who's a video editor in Scotland.
Yeah.
Who wanted to just edit for free. And
yeah,
I reached out to him immediately when we were talking about needing an editor. And I guess he just doesn't. It looks like he hasn't been on Twitter in forever.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that might
smart.
Find its way to him. I don't know. I'll find one.
Yeah.
But I need someone to assemble that one. I guess, I mean, if I don't find someone in the next week or two, I'm just going to ask Alan if he'll do it, and I'll kick him some money to do it.
Yeah, I think it'll work out. You always have help between me and Matteo, preferably Matteo. I don't want to give any more money to this freaking sinking hole.
The amount of time and money I've put into everything.
Jeez Louise, ask Matteo. He's making that Mr. Freeze money. Anyway. So we said something that was pretty interesting during that interview, and there's no spoilers here, but this is one of the many things that we talked about during that day, was that we looked at Matteo's setup and where he's come as an artist. You know, I can't remember, were we talking at dinner or something, talking about the first spaces that we were doing all our drawing in, and then like to compare it to where we are now. I remember Jim saying he was in a room of like mattresses and just like people that he was living with, you know, and just like trying to find a corner to draw in.
It was after that night, after we recorded the episode. It was that night at dinner we had that.
Yeah. And I had like, I can't remember. I would walk, you know, I would be throughout the house just sitting at a couch with a drawing board, you know, and you know, I didn't have a dedicated space at all. And here we were in Matteo's house, beautiful, gorgeous place, a lot of architectural mistakes. He tried to modernize it way too much, and I can't stand his aesthetic. But I mean, to him, it's beautiful. To me, it's atrocious. But either way, you can see that he's come up so well.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like you can see that where he put his hard work into really showed up. Now, here's another sort of like in the spirit of what the record that we did with John and Moore a couple of days ago, which is, this is where hard work, if you really put your head down and just get drawings done. I think one of the things that John said to me that landed really well is like, if you're a person who's out there, and if you're a person who's looking out there and saying, I can't find the thing that I want, go make the thing that you want.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I think he's at the point in his career where he can do that. But also at one point, Matteo, just like, I know these aren't going to be the best projects, but I just need to get into the habit of drawing. And you know, most of us, we drew where we could. regardless of what the situation. I don't know how many times I've heard people say, I used to use the light box when there's a glass table and I would put a lamp under there just so I can, trace over stuff. Like, the level of resourcefulness and industriousness that we'd go to. And then you take a look at our lives now and you're like, man, look at all of that hard work still paying off. You have every opportunity to kind of take the foot off the pedal, so to speak. And yet we haven't.
No,
it's a matter of fact, all it's done is proven to us in the like the most psychopathic way possible, right? In the most pseudo-masochistic way possible. That the harder we work, the more the returns come.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine the last time. I remember just enjoying our time together when we would get an invitation by proxy. And what I mean by that is, like, we'd be invited because, like, a fellow somebody like Tim Sale, rest in peace, gets invited, or somebody like Klaus, or somebody like Dave, or somebody like Dan, and we'd go in on their coattails, and how amazing it was to be in those situations. Fast forward to where we were just talking about in Italy, we're like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I never want us to lose track of the fact that we got there because we were busting our butts. We got there because
you're right about that.
We got there because we found the places where we could draw, and we drew in those places and just really banging away at our craft, making sure that we were like, it's effectively just getting all the mistakes out for years and years, for like a half a decade. You were just putting the reps in. And so sometimes there's a part of me that feels guilty whenever I post that stuff on social media. I think about it. I'm all like whenever we're traveling, like, it's rare that I put something when we're in the middle of I remember like uploading an image of me and Jim on social media, us walking through Bellagio when we were in Como. And I was like, oh man, I really hope this doesn't send the wrong message to people. And
what message are you afraid of it sending?
Which is like we're showing off.
Yeah.
Look at us and look how cool we are and blah blah blah. But also, there's a part of me that's pretty like, why are you ashamed of that?
Right, exactly. And that's what I was going to say is, I have found, because I had that mindset, and after talking to people like followers and stuff, what I've come to find is they love seeing like what they aspire to be happening. It inspires them to keep going.
Yeah.
And so to see, and it's true. I mean, like, for you and I, of course, we didn't have social media, but we had Heavy Metal Magazine, and seeing like Monaro is like, okay, that's inspiring me to keep going.
Yeah.
So it's being an artist isn't just about the work you do. It's also about the life you live. And we talk about business so much in here, and living the life, and how much hard work we do. It's okay to show like, hey, we've earned a little journey. So here's our journey.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I want to inhabit that space more than the paranoid, going back to social media, it sets up this wrong premise sometimes that 90, 95, 98% of people can be really positive and supportive and just be like, dude, you're in Italy. That's so awesome. Someday I'm going to end up in that place. Someday I'm going to be able to go to a show like, the Lake Como Art Festival, and be invited there. And that's really a bucket list thing for me. That would be so amazing. And then you get the 2 people out of those 100 that go like, you freaking show offs, it must be nice to be out there. And I'm all like, they ruin it for you, but those are the ones that stick, and I'm like, wait a second, we got 98 people telling us what an amazing thing it was. Congratulations.
Right. And those people are speaking, and this is something I work on in my head, because I do that shit in my head. They're speaking from a place of either frustration or jealousy or whatever is going on in their life. They're projecting onto that. And so we have to keep that in mind too. We're not showing off. We're just showing.
Yeah. Here's the thing. At least, let me add to what you were talking about, because I take a different perspective on it, right? I don't have the time, energy, resource, and even the motivation to understand why somebody is being negative.
Well, that's
that's a healthy. I don't even want to think about it. If a guy comes in and says, "Hey, whatever negative thing to me in regards to something that, first of all, I'm not projecting as negative, right? I distinctly remember Matteo saying it. He was like, you know, don't make your shit my shit, you know?
Right.
And that
Exactly.
made me laugh, you know? Yeah, that really hit home with me because I was like, yeah, there's a lot of people who want to take, to your point, you know, their insecurities, their sort of like shortcomings as human beings and their personal development, either, you know, when it comes to their craft or just them emotionally, psychologically, and they're like, hey, I'm incomplete right now, and I want to project it onto you. I never even want to go into that space, you know, as in like, why are you acting like a jerk? It's more like, yeah, okay, you're at liberty to act like a jerk. That's up to you.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
up to me to not be like hung up on that. It's very difficult,
Right.
obviously, right?
What I started doing is like if I get a negative comment, which I don't often get, but sometimes I do, on something I post, whether it's somebody saying we're showing off or it's someone saying I don't, something about a drawing I did. I have just gotten in the habit of being kind in return. And I would say 9 times out of 10, it leads to a discussion with someone. Like I remember with INKPULP Instruction, there was someone that was complaining about one little aspect of a video, of a 6-hour video. They're complaining about missing a 5-second clip. And they went on and on and on. And I'm just like, I mean, look, we're shooting this, like we're editing this as we see fit. We're presenting. And I was like, I don't think that was necessary to have in there. I'm sorry. That way, blah, blah, blah. Led to a big conversation, which ended with, well, he eventually said, well, I think it was maybe his mother had just passed away. And I was just kind the whole time. It ended up with him apologizing. And he left a comment on the site, which he then removed without me even asking.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times they're just dealing with something, and you just have to be the conduit for it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's like what Matteo said, you know, which is, you know, they're making their shit your shit. Now, there's something to be said. Obviously, there are times when you just can't use that as the shield for everything. If you're delivering, in your case, if you're delivering an underwhelming product, then you should be able to take feedback and say, I'll do that better. But in that case, it's the level of nitpicking, I think, is what I'm hearing from you. But just like generally, whenever somebody is negative, I just go like, dude, I don't have time for it. You know, unless of course it's specifically about something that I can do something about. But like sometimes people will just get negative and it's not even actionable, you know? The internet being what it is, they'll attack you in the most sort of like base, you know, playground, second grade kind of way, you know, like, oh, you're ugly. And it's like, oh, darn, you hurt my feelings. You know? It's not even...
It's amazing to just read the comments on like a famous actor's post. Like people are just so awful.
They can be. Yeah. But there's multiple sort of like solutions to that. If you're the person that's getting that kind of stupid feedback, you know, and sometimes I'd look back at the situation that I'm in. Like, for instance, let's use the example of us walking around in Italy and somebody goes, oh, you guys are showing off, you know? I could let that affect me. I could be like, oh my gosh, what does that mean? Am I coming off as you know, grandstanding or super arrogant? Or I can go look at my friends hanging out and acting like goofballs on the bow of the ferry because, you know, you're overly excited about the view or whatever it is, even though it's taken 6 hours to get to wherever we were going, you know. I can go and just be like, oh, I need to be present, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
And, you know, I think that's something that I can impart on a lot of people who are still trying to get to where you and I are, or whoever they are using as a point of reference, you know, is to say like, you're gonna get pinged from a lot of different, potentially, if you're doing things right, you're going to get pinged from a lot of different directions, right? It's up to you if you want to spend time addressing all of those things, or to say, hey, I only have so much energy during my day, and I'm going to go focus it on the things that's actually actionable to me, right? You can't say, hey, I want to fix myself. Or if you're doing all right, you know, if you know, like going back to our earlier points, like we didn't get there by accident, you know? No. I think what we did, and people might say like, well, didn't you say you just rode in on Tim Sales and Klaus Jansen's coattails, right? And the answer is yes, absolutely. But once we got there, right? Once we got those opportunities, we didn't sit there and say like, hey, Tim, hey, Klaus, what else can you do for us?
Right. I mean, exactly. And getting in the door is just one thing. You got to use whatever opportunities present themselves to get in the door. But staying in the door is entirely up to you and your work and your work ethic. So like, it's like my kids, like time and time again, when I offered to like help them on social media or announce something, like if they're opening commissions, they're like, no, I don't want to do it that way. That's cheap. I'm like, no. It's like, please use the resource of me. I didn't just, bulldoze my way into this position to not share it with my kids. Like you guys are coming with me.
For sure.
Like there was a competition. There's like a local, I forget the Instagram. It's local Atlanta metal.
Yeah.
And they had on their story, like vote for the top amateur metal act in this Atlanta area. And my son's band was one of them.
Yeah.
It was 3 bands. So they were in second place. So the whole band was at my house last night, sleeping over. And one of them was like, asked me to post about it. And I was like, yeah. So I just posted it with a link and said, go vote for my kid's band. And shot way up and left the other band in the dust. And I'm like,
right.
Good.
Yeah.
Because now you've got people looking at you. So now it's up to you.
Right.
If you perform well now, you've earned the fan.
Some people, and I know of those people, it's the same kind of people who don't, who may not have the same set of advantages as your son did, who want to automatically say, well, that's not fair. And my answer is no shit.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, the simpler answer is life isn't fair. It's just not.
Yeah, it's like, of course it's not fair, right?
That's
like
something I had to come to terms with much later in life. It's an immature thought process.
Absolutely.
To expect things to be fair. That's a child's mind. And
talk about that more, Shawn. Go ahead.
I had to come to terms with this because of my path and I have done very well in a lot of, in terms of a lot of criteria. I've achieved many of my goals, but I'm still struggling to get my footing financially and as a career. So for doing that for so long, I guess there's a lot of, from struggling for so long, a lot of bitterness and anger in me. But I would just, like, I just got hung up on this not fair idea for a long time, and how I always felt like, just watching people like skyrocket past me for doing half of what I did. Like I would just be, that's bullshit. It's not right. It's not fair. But it was listening to some self-help books, and one in particular, I'm trying to remember which one it was. They addressed this.
Yeah.
It was like, that's a childlike way of looking at the world.
Right.
It's not a mature means. And it really, that's when everything kind of hit home with me, where I was like, oh shit, I think my emotional growth, part of it is stunted from my childhood.
Yeah.
And so coming to terms with all that now is it's good. It's healthy, and it's making me let go of a lot of poison in me. But yeah, that mentality of, it's not fair. It's a kid's mentality. It's just, life isn't fair. Life is hard.
To give context to your audience, when you're talking about like the anger and rage, when we were in Italy, you were pretty happy-go-lucky. Everything was just like a breeze to you. But I saw like evidence of it, because there was like a group of ducks that were walking across the street, and you were grabbing ducklings and just ripping heads off. And I was like, oh, there's the guy that's angry at unfair, man.
And I'm just screaming at the ducks, it's not fair.
And just popping heads off ducks that like they're made out of
a trail of heads back to my house.
Yeah. You kept the bodies in your backpack, but the heads were like all strewn all over the street. Now, it's interesting to think of things as not as that concept of like things are unfair as immature, Yeah. Some people, I'd be fascinated to hear from some people who hold that, because you find your fuel, you find your motivation in a lot of different places. potentially some people could be taking the unfair part and saying, hey, I'm going to use that to motivate me. But then at that point, that's the level of self-awareness where you know, like, oh, you know, that's not real, right? You're just saying it out loud. It's like Michael Jordan dropping 40 on a guy because, you know, he told himself that that guy talked shit to him 2 games ago. The reality is he needed to find the motivation to show up the next game.
That's different.
So he can light this guy up, you know?
Right.
I think that's something else altogether. I think I do believe that there's a part of every artist who, you know, you were talking about this about a week ago. I remember you posting it. You said, like, you know, comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
Right. I hold on to that so much. And I don't know what made me snap out of it, but I just remember that's one of the quote unquote unfair sort of hurdles that I had to get over. I had to find a way to clear it, not just by a little bit, but by a lot. And it starts off with a little bit. You have to let go of the fact that, you know, yeah, sure, sometimes there's opportunities that come along and 3 people are up for it. You're one of those 3 and this guy gets it. For whatever reason, you believe that you are that much more qualified than that individual.
Right.
You know, when it comes to like opportunity and maybe potentially being brought onto a crew or something, you know? But then at that point, you're like, there's nothing that I can, you know, oh yeah, that's unfair, but do you just want to stay in that place of stasis? You want to be in that emotional space?
Right.
Or do you want to say, like, okay, that's unfair, that I believe that I'm better than that person, and then just move on. And I think that's the thing. Yeah. People don't know how to engage that mechanism of just like, you got to move on from that.
Right. And that, so there's a few things to unpack there. Well, one is it's when you see it and you're like, that's not fair. Well, learn to just be happy for them. Like that was a big one. Like, like instead of saying like, I could have done better, why didn't I get that opportunity? Be like, well, wait a minute. They did work hard for this.
Sure.
And the opportunity happened. So be happy for them and spread positivity.
For sure. And that's something else. Like that's another thing, which is, I want to add to that, which is like, when I see others succeed, it is natural and very human to be like, oh man, dang, that's so freaking awesome. I wish I had those opportunities and blah, blah, blah. But that's not where I stop. Right. I go like, good for them. Because I know how hard this is.
Right.
You know, I know how difficult this stupid thing is. And I can't remember who it was when we were in Lake Como. Somebody goes like, hey, Eric, what's it feel like to be in that high road? You know? And I go like, oh, I think that was said sort of as a joke to me. But I go like, oh, I guess they surround themselves with people who don't often take the high road.
Right.
You know, like the perspective of like, good for them. That's awesome. You know, like it's, you know, because at the end of the day, there's nothing I can do about that thing. You know, there's very little.
You have a saying that I always repeat in my head that sums up what you're saying right now. Not my monkeys, not my circus.
Not my monkeys, not my circus. Yeah.
That is one I use all the time.
Yeah, that applies to a lot of different things. All the things that are, and most of those things are often pessimistic or negative or just not conducive to anything that adds to my personal trajectory, right? All it does is, going back to the thing I said earlier, all it does is compare me to that, to their success, to their whatever.
Right.
The interesting thing is, it can also be done. Like, I know a couple of people who, they feel bad, and the only way that they can feel better is if somebody else is also feeling bad. Or they're doing worse than them. Yeah.
See, that what you just hit on something really important that I realized. Negativity attracts negativity. Positivity attracts positivity.
Yeah.
So the people that are down don't want to get up out of it. They want to bring people down into it with them. And I think that unintentionally on my part, but the initial version of the podcast, I think I did that. I reached a point where it was when I was starting to wake up to all the I guess the depression I'd been in. I was like, wait a minute, I would see my DMs and they were all like from people listening, and it was all just like, yeah, man, it sucks. I feel you. Thank you for sharing your honesty. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm bringing people down, and I'm just staying where I am. And so now it's a whole different story where people are cracking up at our jokes and making fun of each other, but also the discussions we have and the knowledge we impart now is to help people rise.
Sure.
And I see the comments have changed completely because of that.
Yeah. And I think I don't know. This is just for me, and I use this podcast very selfishly. Somebody who, 2 days ago before I left for LA said, "Hey, I heard that you're doing this podcast now, and people are really liking it. Somebody told me that they watch it and they're having fun watching it." I'm like, "That's cool." And I was compelled to tell them like, "Oh yeah, you know, I use it as an excuse to just hang out with these guys because if we didn't, it would be months on end where we would message each other and be like, 'Hey, how are you doing?' And next thing you know, Matteo has a baby. And next thing you know, like you get caught up. You'll get caught months later giving the concentrated version of what's happened for 30 days previous, 60 days previous, and that really, really sucks because like that's not, at least for me, I'm like, I'd like to be more present in my friends' lives. I'd like to be able to chit chat with them and be like, not just talk art, but obviously just everything else.
Right.
What were we talking about before this? We were talking about like flying and what do you call it? Airplane lounges or whatever the hell we were talking about, like stupid credit card issues and all that. Like we were just talking about that, just a couple of guys, and it just happens to say again.
Computer shit too.
Yeah, computer shit, right? Yeah. Like we were just talking, and I'm using this again selfishly. I'm using this podcast to keep up with you. You know what I mean? To like, hey, check in and see how everyone's doing.
That's what I love about this.
You know who fucked it up is Matteo. I'll say this. He is gonna watch this. But I remember him the first time he suggested something. He was like, "Hey guys, why don't we?"
I like the voice you're using.
Hey guys, I have an idea. Maybe we could bring Jim to be a guest. And I was like, "Yep."
He sounds Middle Eastern at that point.
Yeah. The thing, it wasn't even a suggestion. It was like, we're bringing Jim on to a guest. I'm like, motherfucker, you've been here 2 episodes. You're bringing people on as guests already? All right, you and Shawn talk it out, I'm
fine with it. I mean,
I'm joking.
I'm joking. But I mean, you guys are such good friends and we've done so much together. I just trust you all completely. So I'm totally open to any ideas.
Yeah. So my point that I was trying to make was like, I use the podcast to be able to talk within reason. We're putting this out there. There's stuff that we edit out of these podcasts that we talk about behind the scenes because it's just not appropriate to bring out. It's just really dumb and not necessary. Right. And it also feeds into what you were talking about, which is like, if I have enough awareness of myself to know, like, there's no reason to put that out there. That's like private stuff that we keep completely offline,
And that's a good thing to have, to keep separate.
Yeah. And also because, sometimes we hit on subjects that like everybody's already talking about it. Right. What are we contributing to the conversation that now they're talking about it? It gets really old, really super fast.
Totally.
But I genuinely believe, and if I were to take stock of the kinds of conversations that we have, rare do we ever go into the negative, we'll go into the more complainy, I think we bitch a lot, right? But we never go like everything is broken,
Right.
Everything is.
But we're also not sitting idle complaining about, like, if we, like, let's say we're just in a complaining mode about what's going on at the big 2 publishers and what they're putting out. Well, we're not just sitting here complaining about it. We're actively doing something different
for sure
to put out there.
For sure.
So that makes
I think that's important too, right? There's a lot of talk by people who probably potentially can't do something about it. So I totally understand and sympathize. But I think that's one of the key things that we, I think it's part and parcel of what got us into Italy, right? Because we kind of thought to ourselves, what do we need to do in order to get ourselves ready to be invited to a show like that? Well, clearly we have to go work, right? But what does that work mean? What are the components of that work that allow that to happen? And some people say, oh yeah, well, you guys lucked into it because of X, Y, and Z. I'm like, luck, yeah, of course it was, but we set ourselves up for the best version of luck to happen.
Right.
The worst version of luck is just you continue to talk about it. The best version of luck is to say, hey, I want that thing. What does that mean? And I set myself up just based on my understanding of what's immediately in front of me because I can't predict the future. But I think it means this. I need to do X, Y, and Z kind of work. And when luck finally comes around, it might not be exactly what I thought about the end, but certainly I had the thing in hand to allow me to be that much more successful.
Exactly.
If you want to call that luck, okay. You know?
Yeah, it's that old saying that opportunities when luck meets preparation. Is that the saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is, you know. But I don't want to take anything away from the fact that we have been fortunate.
Absolutely.
You know, all of the things, I think it's everything in combination. It's a lock with multiple tumblers in place, 20, 30 things in place, you know, and some of those tumblers have fallen into place for us to take advantage of it. And that's what you get to see in our social media. It's heavily curated, right? What you see is us walking through the streets and laughing and just like, you know, being in the company of like art giants as far as our industry is concerned.
Yeah.
What you don't see is the freaking closet that Jim said he was drawing in, you know?
Exactly.
The what you don't see is Matteo using his mom's clear table and putting a light under there and waiting for it to cool off because the lamp would heat it up so much he couldn't draw it anymore.
That's
you
right.
know,
That's right.
You don't see that because that's not, you know, that's not sexy to put on social media, right? You see the final product of these amazing paintings, you know, that you don't see the struggles that you were talking about before when it comes to like making sure that your finances line. Like people don't see that stuff, right? You're not in the business of like showing people your freaking, you know, your bank records, right?
Right.
It's so strange to me that people don't think outside of themselves, you know, of that, right?
There's a theme about everything we've touched on so far, and it gets back to the thing, everything's not fair, and we're talking about everything's being seen through a very selfish lens. This is where I think the phones have damaged our brains as a people, as a species, a little bit, because it's conditioned us all to have everything we want, when we want it, the way we want it. And when you spend that much time in this, everything's curated to be exactly what you want it to be.
Sure.
And even the social media companies have figured out how to, you know, develop these algorithms that keep pushing that in a bad direction. So I think that it takes a level of self-awareness to see that and pull back from it. And
for sure,
I'm hoping that as a species, that's the next trend.
I don't know, man. If I can be pessimistic and you know, downhearted about it, like we have, you know, as a society, we've let that particular genie out of the bottle.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's so, you know,
it's
so rough.
Like with my kids who are not, I mean, their generation is just entitled, but they're not spoiled, entitled children. But you know, we'll say, boy, it'd be nice to have this for dinner tonight, and it's just like, we'll DoorDash it.
Yeah.
At 15, what do you like? Just DoorDash it? Like,
yeah.
Or just take an Uber. Like these things didn't exist before.
Yeah,
like my attitude of I can have whatever I want to eat right now just by opening this app.
Yeah, I laugh because my son, who's all of 4 years old, effectively said the same thing. He's watching one of his favorite programs, one of his favorite like things on TV, which is just like monster trucks, you know, loves construction vehicles, typical kid of his age. Yeah. And he's like, Dad, is there any way that I can get, hey, Dad, it wasn't a question. It was more of a demand. Hey, Dad, can I get that construction truck and you can get it on your phone right now?
Of course.
Yeah. And I was like, geez, Louise, kiddo. No, you may not, you know?
Yeah.
Somebody has to be the grown-up in the room and say you can't have those things, you know. But it just goes to show when you're talking about that barrier to entry, when it comes to like immediate sort of that immediate instant gratification, phones bring that into your life. It opens up the world to say, what do you want? We can probably get it for you. Yes. I laughed at this. I didn't share this with you guys when we were in Italy. I'd been meaning to tell you this story, but as a joke, right? I got the next time that we go to Italy, I wonder if we can all fly here on a private plane. just as a stupid, what do we need to do in order to fly to Italy?
You researched this, I'm sure, right?
I did. Because I am that level of just like, because sometimes you surprise yourself, you know what I mean? And
Right,
this was
right.
not a surprise by any means. Yeah. So I thought like, okay, so how many people would fly in this just tragic accident of a plane crash, you know? Anyway, I counted them. I thought like, okay, so potentially 8 people in total, maybe 9. Let's say as many as like a dozen, you know? So I looked up like there, and so I go like, I wonder what this means. Like if I just have a thing and I put in like fly in a private plane, and there's an app for it, for crying out loud.
I'm sure there is.
I'm gonna call out the app in hopes that they hear us.
Okay. Our
In
new
hopes
sponsor.
that we're
We're gonna all of a sudden have free private jets wherever we
Oh,
go.
dude, tell me that wouldn't be freaking awesome.
Oh, I'd be hyped as hell on that.
That an airplane, you know, an airplane. What do you call it? So I can't find it right now. Damn it! I'll do it next time. We'll open with it. We'll do an ad for them. Anyway, show it to the 3 people watching and the 20 bots. You know? Anyway, the idea is that some of these planes, the reason why as a business model it works for them, because some of these planes often stay grounded throughout the year. There's no sense in, you know, that it costs money to keep these things in storage and to keep them on the runway. It's actually better if you are somehow getting these things off the ground with a proper sort of clientele and the payment for it. So they do it with a vast, really like a big, deep discount, you know?
Yeah.
And so I thought like to Italy and back, especially we were going, I put Milan, right? Because that's where we were flying into.
Right.
I put it from Atlanta to Milan, or did I put like, no, it couldn't have been, there's not enough of a big enough international airport. So the only thing I was like, oh, I'd have to fly to Atlanta and everybody would have to fly to Atlanta and like leave from there, or potentially like even, you know, JFK or like one of these bigger airports that are on that side of the world. So it wouldn't cost an arm and a leg, right?
Right.
It's 60K. 60 to 80K there and back for 12 people. If you do the math behind that,
yeah,
it might be feasible.
Dude, that's a lot cheaper than I thought it would be. I thought you were going to say 200 grand.
No, it's like, unless I'm misremembering it, take it with a grain of salt. My brain is pretty stupid.
If there's 10 of us, that's 6,000 a ticket. That's a lot. But
yeah, it's still a lot,
it's
right?
not,
but it's a private plane.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Like let's say at its high end, it's 85,000, right? Divided by 12 people, like 7K, right?
Yeah.
Well, what does that mean? Is that we're flying there and back on our own plane,
which is pretty awesome.
Pretty freaking awesome, you know? Yeah. Now, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is like, here we are talking about burning through $7,000 a head. And back then we were drawing in closets, and now we have entertaining the idea of like getting on a plane, renting a private plane for 12 people, you know? What kind of a world are we in? But rather than focus on the disbelief I have, I'd rather say like every person who has the opportunity, who has the aspiration to do it, it's totally feasible. Because I'll speak for myself and potentially you, but definitely Matteo and his stupid, shitty, you know, Mr. Freeze Run.
You know, if Matteo was a good friend, he would just get the plane for us.
He would just buy it. He wouldn't even just rent it. He would just buy it.
And he could put Jim's cartoon Italian guy on the plane.
What kind of a friend doesn't buy his other friends their own private jets?
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't have him back on the show. That is really.
I think we should. I think we should think about it. I think if anything, we should bring your enabler, Jim, international superstar Jim Food, back as a consistent, you know, co-host, because at the very least, he's down to talk to whatever you talk about.
If Jim lets some of his Lebanese accent come forward, then I don't think people would recognize Matteo's gone.
Yeah, I would think so too. I think they'd be just like, that's weird. He's suddenly wearing glasses. You know? he's got a healthier coif of hair. You know what I mean? Like it's... Now, how many more of these do we got to do before Matteo comes back? Is it? Do we get a lot? We get a few.
Matteo comes back. I'm not sure exactly, but I have scheduled for. Actually, I just got an email for the show. We are recording with Jason Shawn on June 14th, and I know he'll be back for that. Awesome. I think he's just getting back.
All right. So I'm hoping that we can bank enough of these things so that when he does come back, he's irrelevant. You know, like, okay, he's what do you call it? He's back. It's nice, but
And
these guys carried it before
back.
he got here, and he carried it after he left. So
I gotta say, the podcast is growing every week.
Okay.
The viewership is going up. The subscribers is going up. We're doing something good here. And
I hope that don't make the causation associated with the fact that Matteo is here.
No,
I think people just started picking up on it. They started going like, "Oh, that's a really good podcast. I love going there and just hanging out with these guys." Oh, and it happens to be that there's Matteo that showed up.
Right.
Yeah. And also, when you and I are talking, I believe that the audience is genuine, right? They're real.
Of course.
They're real people. When you and I and Matteo are talking, I feel like there's the audience, and then there's like I don't know, like.
Well, were you there when Matteo was talking about people in Naples?
Yeah. You think it's a bunch of.
I think Matteo might be one of those people.
Okay, listen, we're gonna need to sign out soon, but give people the context of that story from Naples.
Okay, so Matteo, he was very animated telling this story. He loves Naples. He loves the city. It's beautiful, but the people there, he said, a lot of them are very shyster, aggressive type people, and he was complaining about I had to go to Naples for this con, and the minute I got out of my cab, people are asking for cigarettes, and he's complaining about it. So I think, but now that I'm thinking about it, he's speaking about himself.
I think that's an outward projection from him.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Can I tell you the one story I remember when he was just super animated about people from Naples, and I don't think he cares whether or not we say that out loud. I don't think it's like a private thing. I think he just genuinely doesn't care for them.
Yeah.
He told me this one time that the seatbelt law is kicked in in the entire in the country. But he's like, these people from Naples are such what was the word that he was using? He's like, they're so arrogant. It wasn't arrogant. It wasn't like arrogant. Jerk. It was like, these guys are just so whatever. But I think you understand the spirit I'm talking about. There's these people from Naples, instead of doing, following. They're just going to
do it the way they want to do it.
Exactly.
They're going to do it the way they want to do it.
I'm sure when he gets back a couple of weeks from now, he'll be able to describe it. If we haven't completely blown him up, and then the Napoleon people are just going over there, knocking down his door. By the way, we're talking about Matteo Scalera. He lives in Parma, so he's really easy to find. People of Napoli, go get him.
Go get him.
So he said, these guys. They're just such jerks or whatever. That's not his word. That's my word. But they're such jerks when they put in the seatbelt law. Instead of wearing the seatbelts, they got shirts with black bands across the shirts.
That's an illustration of what he was saying perfectly. Perfect.
And as he was saying it, I was like, that's so weird. And he's like, yeah, that's these guys, from Naples. And I thought all right. But you're right. I think it might be that Matteo is potentially just projecting his overall dislike of himself onto a group of people who don't deserve it.
Yeah, it feels to me like, and I have no knowledge to back this up, but I just wonder if the people of Naples, if there's a large descendant of gypsies in Naples, because that mindset of I'm going to do it my way is a very gypsy mentality, I think.
Sure. Also, Shawn Crystal, for you gypsies that are offended by that, Shawn Crystal lives in Atlanta somewhere. Just go up and down the street yelling his name. I'm sure they'll point you in the right direction. All right, that's it. I'm gonna hit the outro now. We'll talk to you guys later. Keep things positive, you bunch of non-positive people. Bye.
This is the INKPULP Podcast. This is the INKPULP Podcast. Comics, hip hop, life.
Yo.